this video we're going to replace this single basin mixer tap. This can be very difficult to do because it is difficult getting access because the basin is actually in a vanity unit. So that is the tap, and as you can see the water is leaking quite badly down the side of it there, and then it is actually leaking and pooling all the way around the basin. This tap also has a pop-up waste at the back there, so we will have to ensure that we fix that onto the new tap. It is very difficult tightening and undoing the nuts which hold the taps in position, but you can make it a lot easier by getting a box spanner like that. You can actually buy a set of these, and these actually go from about 9mm up to 13mm, and you can see that that's a good fit on there. And then on this end I actually get a socket that will fit that end, and then I can use the ratchet to tighten and undo the nuts. On the tap that we are installing, it actually has two nuts that need tightening, and the one that we are undoing only has the one nut which is holding the tap in position. This is going to be very difficult to film because of the restricted access underneath. I've now been downstairs, I've isolated the water, and I've opened the downstairs tap in the central position like that, so it's actually drained the hot and the cold water. So now on this one, if I actually open that up, you'll hear that making a noise. That is the water draining out of this tap, and that will be going downstairs. If you have a conventional heating system, you may need to close a gate valve on the hot water side. You can actually put a new cartridge in these taps, but a lot of the time it's not really worth it. You're better off just fitting a new tap. As you can see, the top on this one is all corroded, and that is where the zinc is actually corroding. So after a few more years that'd be so badly pitted that it would look really bad. In order to make it easy, I'm just going to disconnect the pop-up waste. I can do that simply by undoing that small screw. So I've rigged up the box spanner and the ratchet, and we're now going to undo the nut which holds the tap in position. As you can see, the whole stud has actually been removed from the tap there. We can now just grip the compression fitting with a pair of water pump pliers, and then we can undo the nut on the top there. That's the horseshoe that has just fallen down, and as you can see that is in pretty bad condition. We can now simply lift up the tap. Or you can pull the flexes through the hole. We'll then just give that a clean with a multi-surface wipe. So I'm now going to take the new tap, and in there we put this O-ring, which is called an anti-rotational washer in the instructions. We then take the two tails and screw those in, and it does say in quite a few places that you should not use a spanner to tighten these up, so you only need to screw these in by hand. They are both now tight. We also need to put the two studs in. They simply screw in the back like so. I'm just going to nip those up with a screwdriver. We can then pop the waste through there. The waste on this tap is actually in two pieces, so we're just going to push that through there for now, and then we'll connect up the other side later. So we can now take that, and we can push the hoses through the hole all at once. And then from underneath we need to put the rubber washer on with the metal horseshoe washer, and then we need to put the two nuts on, and that will hold the tap in position. At this point you need to ensure that the tap is perfectly straight, and finally we're just going to tighten those up using the ratchet. Obviously you don't need to go mad when you're doing this, you don't want to start breaking anything. We can now reconnect the flexi tails, ensuring we're getting the correct way around. Obviously the cold one is on the right. Unfortunately, the new flexis are a little bit shorter than the ones that I took off. They're only about 1 inch shorter, but that means that this is very taut, which is no good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to swap this part for an isolation valve, like so. That will give us a little bit extra height. And then in the top of that, I'm going to put a flexi tap tail adapter. So this is a little bit of extra work, but it's one of those things that you really need to do, because you do not want a flexi tail like that being taut, because it can lead to it failing. Because this one's more difficult to get to, I'm going to put the flexi tail adapter in there. There is a copper olive in the top, obviously. I'm now going to tighten that compression nut. And obviously we do need to ensure that that is very tight. Once that's tightened in there, we can then get the flexi tail and we can screw that directly onto the adapter, ensuring it's not cross-threaded. We can just tighten that up using a spanner. Obviously we don't want to go mad when we're doing that, because it is only a rubber sealing washer in there. You do need to ensure when you're fitting the isolation valves that the arrow is pointing in the correct direction. This time I'm going to make it a bit easier. I'm going to get the isolation valve, put the tail adapter in there, and I'm going to tighten this up before we put it in position. Obviously it's a lot easier now. We can just put that in position and tighten up the bottom compression nut. So they are all now really tight. We now just need to screw on the final flexi tail. And finally I'm just going to reinstate the pop-up waste. Unfortunately I can't film this bit because there's absolutely no room in there whatsoever. I've now de-isolated the water and checked for leaks. I'm now just going to get a piece of kitchen roll, which I've cut into 2 pieces. And I'm just going to wrap that around the pipe. And if you do this, if you do get a tiny weep, it becomes immediately apparent, because the tissue will be soaking wet in no time. So you're a lot better off doing this rather than waiting for the water to come through the ceiling. So that's the new tap. As you can see, the pop-up waste is working. When you open the tap for the first time, you need to be aware that it is going to be air locked. So it's a good idea just to crack it open very slowly. I've actually had this tap open and I have actually bled all of the air out of the system. I hope you found this video useful. If you have and you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the channel.